This is Mortification of Spin from the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals. We can only continue with your help. Visit mortificationofspin.org to make a donation or call 1-800-488-1888. What's the purpose of a robust theology if it cannot practically help the believer? Carl, Todd, and Aimee talk with pastor and cancer survivor Paul Wolfe about his battle with cancer. Be listening after the podcast, and I'll give you details on how to win a free book.
Welcome to the Mortification of Spin, the regular podcast of the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals. I'm Todd Pruitt, the pastor of Covenant Presbyterian Church in beautiful Harrisonburg, Virginia. I'm joined, as always, by Carl Trueman, professor of church history at Westminster Seminary and pastor of Cornerstone Presbyterian Church in Ambler, Pennsylvania. And, of course, Aimee Byrd, author of Housewife Theologian, is with us as well. Well, our goal, typically, is to have conversation about things that count. So far, we have conversation that are fairly interesting every once in a while. Carl and Aimee, I think it could be better if we introduced more disagreements between us, perhaps a few audible slaps on the program, that kind of thing. But we want to, as often as we can, give resources and point people to books and other persons who are particularly helpful for the church in various areas. And I think today is going to be one of those programs that is right up that alley in a good, encouraging, sobering discussion about things that count with our guest today. Carl Trueman. You're not our guest. You're one of our hosts.
I am indeed.
Yeah, but who's joining us today?
Well, we're very privileged today to have Paul Wolfe, who is the associate pastor of New Hope Presbyterian Church. That's one of your lot, Todd. PCA,
yes.
In Fairfax, Virginia. Same great state as your church.
Absolutely.
I'm delighted, by the way, that you're still at that church.
Oh,
Again,
yes.
It's showing a real long pastorate for you this time. You've not alienated enough people to have you removed as yet.
But I'm working on it.
It does look like they're abusing him, though.
I have a gash on my head that's quite
a
ugly.
meat cleaver planted in the middle of his head recently. Karen, if you're out there, I sympathize. I probably have done the same myself.
I'm just amazed it happened while I was in Virginia and not in Pennsylvania, but that's another story.
I think he did it taking a selfie, right? Is that what happened?
I did. That's exactly what it was. Taking pictures of my books.
Not to get too distracted, but Todd did give me a pipe recently. And my wife, Katrina, has promised to plant a meat cleaver in his head when she gets her hands.
It's a wonderful habit.
On
Give
him.
it a friend.
It is a beautiful pipe, a Savinelli, Italian.
It's a Savinelli, absolutely.
Anyway, to bring us back on target, let me reintroduce our guest.
Yes.
Our guest this morning is Paul Wolfe, the associate pastor of New Hope Presbyterian PCA Church in Fairfax, Virginia. Paul is a graduate of Westminster Theological Seminary. He and I first met way back, I think in the year 2000 or 1999, when Paul was graduating from Westminster, and I had come over, was staying at the house of Darrell Hart in order to be interviewed by the Westminster Board for the position which I now hold. And we met, I think, at a graduation party or barbecue at the Harts that evening. And one of the things that was most distinctive about Paul at that time was that he was a very young man. He'd only got married fairly recently, but he was suffering from cancer and facing the reality of his own mortality at a very early stage in his life. It's wonderful, therefore, to be speaking with him over a decade on. Paul underwent successful cancer treatment. Not only that, but he's also written a book, My God is True, Lessons Learned Along Cancer's Dark Road, available from Banner of Truth, and we'll be giving some of these away free at the end of the program. This book is Paul's testimony to God's faithfulness during a time of serious illness. So welcome to the program, Paul. Wonder if you have anything to begin with you'd like to add to what I've said before we start ask you about how your experience challenged you and how it has shaped you both as a Christian and as a pastor.
Sure. Well, let me say, first of all, I appreciate the invitation to be with you today. I did a little research. I looked up your podcast on iTunes, and there the description referred to germane cultural references and British accents. So
it should be British accents singular, I think.
I'm not sure how much I'm going to have to offer here. You definitely don't want to hear my British accent, and I do have a Groucho Marx reference in my God is True, but I'm not sure that Groucho counts as germane these days.
I was a member of the Friars Club, and the first time I went there, I was surrounded by barbers and dentists and, a whole group of people that I have very little in common with unless I need my teeth pulled out. So after the third week, I sent him a telegram and says, please accept my resignation. I don't want to belong to any club that will accept me as a member.
I'm actually Australian as well. It's not an English accent. Sorry, Paul.
I do appreciate the invitation to be with you. And yeah, it was 2000, the year 2000, when I graduated from Westminster. So I was sort of on my way out, I think, just as you were coming in to begin teaching there. So graduated in 2000, and that would have been just a few months after what was sort of the end of our cancer journey. I was diagnosed in April of 99, so near the end of my third year at Westminster. Treated throughout the spring and summer, and then got back to school for my last year in the fall of 99 and managed to graduate in 2000. So all told, between diagnosis and last medical appointment, it was about a year, just under a year. And so there was a sense in which it ended, but there's also a profound sense in which something like that doesn't end, because it sticks with you, it shapes you, it changes you in some ways that you don't even see at the time. And I think that became clear to me when I came around to wanting to write a book about it, which was years later. I'd had it in the back of my mind after going through cancer that I might want to try to write something about it, but it just stayed there in the back of my mind and didn't really follow through on it. But when I got around to wanting to write something about it, it was remarkable how, in a sense, how easy it was to write. Because what we'd been through and the truths that had been impressed upon us going through it, I think perhaps without even realizing it, those truths had become so deeply ingrained in Christy and me and had become such a part of my ministry as a pastor to the congregation that when it came time to write, it was all there, just almost waiting to be written. And at that point, it was just a matter of bringing together the memories of the experience with the truths that we'd learned going through it. So the experience itself may be less than a year, but in a lot of ways, it makes a lifetime worth of impressions.
Mm-hmm. Paul, I wonder if you could sum up, and this may be unfair after having written a book, but in a way, the best way you might know how at this point, what do you want to tell people in this book, your first book, My God is True? What do you want to say to those who are in the midst of a cancer battle, or those who are who love and have a close relationship with someone who's going through cancer?
Right.
What do you want to say to them?
Right. Well, I'm going to come across here as a Calvinist, I hope, but
Good.
You've got to come to grips with the sovereignty of God. Mm-hmm. And you can't wait to come to grips with that. Don't wait to be diagnosed. In a way, it's a word for everybody.
Right.
Whether you're suffering profoundly or not. Mm-hmm. Don't wait to get the truth of God's sovereignty into your heart and mind, into your bloodstream. Because when you're diagnosed, that's not the best time to start thinking about those things. And so you want to get that truth into your own heart and mind, and not the bare claim, God reigns, but keep going. He reigns in wisdom and love, and He reigns over me and for me, and everything He's bringing to pass, He's doing some good in and for me. And even if it's death, death will mean life. Mm. And so I think that's a word for everybody. Don't wait. Soak those truths in, absorb them.
That's such a good point, Paul, because I think so often people think of theology and doctrine as cold and impersonal and unloving. And you're saying these words with such conviction and such passion. So talk to us about how important good theology is to going through something as tragic as cancer.
Yeah, well, I remember vividly the day I was diagnosed. I'd had back pain for months. First, we thought I just pulled a muscle. The pain wouldn't go away. Then the theory became, well, maybe you've got a herniated disc. You really should get it checked out. Then my legs started going numb. Finally went in for an MRI. And at that point, I'm in a wheelchair. The MRI's over. They wheel me into the little room where they put the films up on the screen so you can see. And with my untrained eye, I'm looking for the disc that's out of whack, and they all look like they're in line. And that's when he takes his pen and he circles the mass that's not supposed to be there, and he starts talking about what it almost certainly is. And that's when Christy says, I need to sit down. Mm-hmm. And theology paid off in that moment.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And, one of the things I talk about in the book is what a blessing the preaching ministry of our church turned out to be. That it was about 6 years between when I first started going to the church I'm serving now. I started out as a member there out of college. It was about 6 years between when I first got there and April 23rd, 1999, when I was diagnosed. And for those 6 years, week in and week out, the pastor of that congregation, Dave Coffin, and he still serves as the senior pastor, I'm the associate there now. Week in and week out, he was preaching the word, steadily, faithfully preaching the word. He was serving up a steady diet of good Christian theology, including how to think about trials, the sovereignty of God, all of those things I was just talking about. And what neither of us realized was that for those 6 years, he was getting me ready for cancer by just steadily setting before the congregation a diet of Christian truth. And it turned out to be deeply, even dramatically practical in my life in ways that neither of us could possibly have anticipated. So I think that's an important lesson I've taken from the whole experience, is getting good theology, getting Bible truth into your heart and mind. Take advantage of all the ways in which the Word is set before you, week in and week out, day after day, even if there aren't fireworks, even if it's not a spectacular spiritual experience. Yes, just press on, imbibe that truth, because you have no idea how you're going to need it down the road. And I think about that today as a preacher. I get up in the pulpit and I look out. I see the congregation. I see the kids. I see my own kids. And who knows? Literally, God only knows what's in store for them and what someday they're going to need to be ready for. And here I am up in the pulpit, and my calling, among other things, is to get them ready. Not by trying to wow them, but by just trying to set the truth before them faithfully over and over again and praying for them so that that truth gets into them. Yeah.
It's interesting, Paul. Obviously, you were very well supported by your church, both at the time and clearly previous to the time of trial. This question may appear to be an invitation for you to criticize the church, and I don't want it to be read that way, but are there things that you would do differently now as you look back on how the church supported you? Are there things that, having come through it, you would think, well, that was good, but actually it would have been better if they'd done this, or if they'd come at me from this direction? How has the experience of cancer changed your attitude to pastoral care in the broadest sense, given your experience of pastoral care at the time?
Yes. Honestly, looking back, I can't think of one thing that stands out, one blunder as I think about how our church, New Hope Presbyterian Church, related to Christy and me. It was remarkable how they rallied around us. And that, too, I think, was the fruit of the preached word. Now that I think about it, they were getting ready for my cancer.
Yeah. That's
in
a really
ways
good
that
point.
we hadn't anticipated.
Yeah.
And so, it was extraordinary how they rallied around us and served us in practical ways. Now, I did learn some lessons about how we shouldn't try to comfort people who are suffering. But I can honestly say those lessons didn't grow out of things that were done to me or said to me by people at New Hope. It was by the broader Christian community. And one of the lessons I learned was how not to comfort people. Don't offer them false assurances, because I had that happen to me, not by folks at New Hope, but the day I was diagnosed, there was a member of the staff there at the medical facility who, after it was clear that I had cancer, came up to me and said, "I've got a word from the Lord that you're going to be healed."
Yikes.
Now, I was healed, but she didn't have a word from the Lord.
No.
And she didn't just say it to me, she said it to my mother. My parents were there that day. And my wife overhears this. That's how not to comfort. There's where your theology pays off.
Yeah.
The sufficiency of Scripture, right?
Yeah.
And the
that
thing is,
be
it's
enough for you.
Yeah,
as you're suffering.
yeah. It's well-intentioned. We've all been there. Somebody we love is suffering, and we want to have something to say, right? We want to have something to
It's
offer,
tempting.
and we can feel like, I have nothing to say. I've got nothing to give here. So you just go grasping and reaching, and the temptation is to offer up assurances, promises that God just hasn't made about healing and about how the sun will come out tomorrow and all the rest. Yeah. And that was a lesson I took from it, that we dare not allow ourselves to be distracted by false promises. And that's what they are. They're distractions, because they keep us from grasping on to the real promises that God has given, which are infinitely better than the false promises we might come up with.
One thought struck me, Paul, first of all, was just gratitude that you were able to say about your church, they cared for us really well. And I'm reminded again to be thankful that for all of our blemishes, the church is still the body of Christ, and there's a lot of churches out there that by God's grace do some things well. What were the best things that your church did for your family during this time? What were the few of the most helpful?
They didn't just say, "Let me know if there's anything I can do to help." There was some of that, and that's understandable. Sure. I say that sometimes too. But there was also, "We're going to come over and clean up your apartment. When can we come over and do that?" Yeah. They didn't just wait. Right. They said, "Okay, look, here's a need. We're going to come over and do it. We're not going to let you say no. That's not an option. You have to tell us when it's convenient for us to come over and do that." I mean, it was that kind of thing. Talking to me about tennis. Because when you have cancer, you don't always want to talk about cancer. You want to talk about tennis and the World Cup, and maybe even about politics, although that isn't of particular interest to me. But so that was part of it as well, still relating to me as Paul Wolfe, and not just Paul Wolfe, the cancer patient. That was part of it. And there was the ongoing ministry of the Word. I've already mentioned that was a great blessing getting us ready for cancer. Well, it was also a great blessing going through it. And not just sermons about cancer and trials, but the steady life of the church, week in and week out, New Hope carrying on, doing the things we'd always done. Because again, you want a measure of normalcy if you can get it. And just being able to show up on Sunday and sing favorite hymns and talk to people about how they're doing. Don't underestimate the power of the ordinary ministry of the church week in and week out. When you're going through something spectacular, you don't necessarily need spectacular things to get you through it.
Yeah, I love to hear, again, just these reminders of the power of God's ordinary means that he's given to the church for this. It's very encouraging.
Did you find the Lord's Supper a particular comfort and help to you at the time as well, Paul?
I did, and we serve the Lord's Supper every Sunday at New Hope. And it was wonderful to be able to come with that expectation every Sunday that I'm going to be nourished here. And every Sunday to have portrayed before you and to eat and drink the truth of the gospel, and the truth in particular of suffering on the way to glory. Because what does the Lord's Supper tell us every time? It shows us that he suffered. But it also reminds us that it was suffering unto glory, because now it's the risen, glorified Christ who has spread the feast. Mm-hmm. So I show up every Sunday with cancer, knowing that Christ lives, and he's the one who has spread the feast, and he's the one who's calling me, saying, Paul, come, eat and drink and feed.
Paul, I can't help but think about how writing this first book and experiencing cancer led to your second book, writing Setting Our Sights on Heaven. And so could you share with us briefly just about how going through cancer and writing about that maybe gave you more of a heightened eternal perspective,
Sure.
even in the mundane life without cancer?
Yes. It's something I mentioned in the first book, My God is True, that going through cancer does impress upon you the truth of your mortality and raises issues of heaven and hell in a new way. Thankfully for me, mine was the hope of heaven. Mm-hmm. And then you're healed. At first you think, oh, this is great. I've got cancer. I'm going to be so holy now. I'm going to think about heaven all the time. And then you're healed, and then time passes and reality sets in, and the impression fades. And that's something I wrestled with. You know, I think about Paul's words in Colossians 3. He says, set your minds on things that are above. But the fact is we don't. Mm-hmm. That is a struggle for all of us. And that weighed on me, I think especially coming out of cancer. Why is this so hard? Yeah. Why am I not heavenly minded in the way that I ought to be, especially given what I've been through? And the more I wrestled with that and wondered about that, the more it struck me there are a lot of answers to that question. There are a lot of factors that keep us from being heavenly minded in the way that we ought to be. And that's how the second book came to be, because I got to thinking about them, those factors, brainstorming about them. And the more I thought about it, I thought, wow, all of these factors that keep us from being heavenly minded, they really run the gamut of Christian faith and experience. And that's when I got to thinking, maybe there's something here worth writing about. So it is a book about heaven and heavenly mindedness, but not primarily. It's primarily a book about why it's hard to be heavenly mindedness. What are the barriers? What are the obstacles? And what are we going to do about it? Because we shouldn't settle for a thin, impoverished Christian life that has so little heaven in it. We're missing out on so much. And so we ought to rise up and figure out what the obstacles are and do something about them, because it's worth it.
That's encouraging.
And I think there's an irony to oftentimes growing up hearing the cliches about, we shouldn't spend all of our time thinking about heaven. Well, the problem is that growing up in a conservative evangelical home church, we actually didn't talk about heaven that much.
Right.
The problem isn't that we're so heavenly minded we're no earthly good. The problem is we tend not to be very heavenly minded,
exactly.
and therefore aren't much earthly good.
I think that's exactly right.
Well, it's been great to have you with us, Paul. I think you've given our listeners a lot to think about. Most, if not every person listening to this podcast will either have lost somebody to cancer, or will know somebody who's struggling with cancer, or one day will struggle with it themselves, or know somebody who is struggling with it. So it's been a very moving and also very, very practical 25 minutes that you've spent with us. So all that remains is for me to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, as Todd would say, to be with us today. And again, to commend to our listeners Paul's 2 books, My God is True, Lessons Learned Along Cancer's Dark Road, and Setting Our Sights on Heaven, Why It's Hard and Why It's Worth It. The Puppet Master tells me that we have a certain number of copies of My God is True to give away for those who care to contact the website, mortificationofspin.org. So all that remains then is for me to say thank you for joining us on Mortification of Spin. Please visit the website and join us again for another casual conversation about things that count.
This has been Mortification of Spin, a podcast of the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals. Remember to visit our website, mortificationofspin.org, to win a free copy of My God is True by Paul Wolfe. Mortification of Spin is a production of the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals. Alliance ministries include Reformation21.org, Every Last Word with Philip Ryken, and events held from Florida to Sacramento. To learn more about the Alliance, visit alliancenet.org or call 800-488-1888. We can only continue to bring you Mortification of Spin with your support. To make a donation, please visit mortificationofspin.org or call 800-488-1888. Please listen again, and don't forget your free download.